From the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com, this is the Wildcast.
Another pregame episode of the Wildcast podcast coming your way on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It's also available on the Wildcaster mobile app. Justin Spears here with Michael Lev, and it's going to be another two-man podcast this week. Our sports editor, Brett Farah, unable to make it in studio, but we do have his picks, and we will get into that later on in the podcast for another Pac-12 pick'ems. Let's see if we can bounce back. I'm feeling pretty good about myself after the first week.
You should, my friend. You really should. That's the comeback story of the week that no one's talking about. Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit.
We'll talk Colorado, and I mean Boulder, Colorado right now is like at the center of college football universe. Every single sports talk show and their mothers are at Boulder right now for Colorado State. We'll get into all of that and talk other notable Pac-12 storylines with our Pac-12 pickups later on in the podcast. But we got a big one on Saturday. I think it's a big one. It's the final non-conference game of the season. They're favored by 17 points. The Wildcats are going to go out there.
It's up to 8. It's up to 18 now.
Now it's up to 18. So Arizona is expected to go out and manhandle UTEP. But I would say it's a big one because it's coming off a loss. And Jed Fish said in his post-game radio interview in their loss to Mississippi State that they're going to kind of go out and take it out on UTEP this week. So I kind of feel bad for the Miners. They're 1-2 this season. They're coming off a 38-7 loss to the Fighting Michael Levs at Northwestern. But Arizona, we saw that they came out last week, had 5 turnovers, and had an opportunity to win the game. Lev, do you think we're going to see a lot of turnovers out of Jayden de Laura, considering they're playing against UTEP? And if we see multiple interceptions out of Jayden de Laura against UTEP, maybe we should start sounding the alarm.
I'm going to say that we're not. For the most part, during Jayden's career here, he has made course corrections, along the way. Like, I didn't do this particular thing well this last week. I'm going to improve on it this upcoming week. So I think he's going to play a clean game. For the most part, I think that we're going to see more rushing the football from the Wildcats than we've seen of late. I mean, it really was a very pass-heavy type of game last week. It was almost a Mike Leachian ratio of passes to runs in that game against his former team, Mississippi State, while Mississippi State was the other way, and they were very run-heavy. So I think we're going to see a little bit of a reestablishment of the run game. I think that Jayden is going to play a much cleaner, sounder game, and I think he might even be out of the game by middle of the third quarter because Arizona is going to put up a bunch of points in this game, and I just don't think UTEP is going to be able to keep pace.
I don't think so either, and we'll have our score predictions later on in the podcast too, but I think that this is going to be a game where Arizona can really just go out and throw a bunch of different things, maybe experiment a little bit, but I definitely think that getting the running game going is going to be very important because we've seen the running backs be used in this offense, but Michael Wiley has been utilized as a pass catcher. Same with Jonah Coleman. I think this is going to be the game where you really start to see Arizona's offensive line play downhill. I expect Raymond Polito, the starting right guard who came in as a high-profile recruit, 6'6", 335-pound true freshman. He didn't play the first 2 weeks of the season because he had a bike accident on campus. And Brendan Carroll wouldn't reveal the details of what happened in the bike accident, but hey, you're without one of your best offensive linemen. That's going to be pretty interesting. And what Arizona did was they had Sam Lange start at guard in the first game, and then they put Joseph Bourgeon out at tackle and moved Big Jonah back in at right guard. So they were moving around the offensive line, which I think could actually be good for Arizona because now you know,
in the long run, right?
In the long run, because now you know what you got. If push comes to shove and you need to make some adjustments on the offensive line, which had to happen last year once Jordan Morgan went down, you kind of figure out who are your best horses and you can put those guys out there. But Raymond Polito coming back and making his Arizona debut, I think they picked a very good game for that because I think Raymond Polito is going to have a field day against UTEP's front.
Yeah, I don't know the details of Polito's bike accident either, but I will say this, kids. Please wear a helmet if you're riding a bike or a scooter. I know it's not cool, maybe there's some peer pressure involved here, but I make my kids wear helmets when they ride their bikes. We have a lot of pedestrian fatalities here in Tucson, and because people are careless. And this is not exactly the same thing, but hey, it's dangerous on them streets, right? So please wear a helmet. As far as the offensive line goes, I think this would be a good entry point for Pulido if he's healthy and able to participate. A home game. It's challenging when you're a freshman offensive lineman on the road. You remember Jordan Morgan's debut game at Hawaii?
Couple false starts, right?
Yeah, I think he had multiple false starts on field goal block, and they just kept backing up, and I think Lucas Haversick made the long field goal anyway, in a wild and crazy game in a lot of ways. And that's not even that loud of a venue, like imagine if, Pulido's debut had been last week. You were there. You know how loud it was down in Starkville. I mean, that could be very disconcerting.
Yep.
So I think this would be a great time for him to get his feet wet. Even if he doesn't play the entire game, get out there for 30, 40 snaps, and then he'll be kind of good to go for the following week at Stanford.
Defensively, Lev, anything that you're looking out for? I know that safety is still another interesting position for the Wildcats because Gunnar Maldonado seems to not have great performances in the first two games of the season. We saw him miss a couple of tackles. We saw the targeting foul that got him ejected against NAU. And then he comes back in the second half against Mississippi State and is a part of that coverage that gave up that passing touchdown to Lydiatric Griffin. So a lot of people are questioning Gunnar Maldonado and his ability to play safety. But the coaching staff, they love him. They talk about communication, how they're able to handle themselves out on the field, and all the little things that a safety should do, Gunnar does. But from our perspective, when we see just performance-wise, Gunnar's not really living up to those expectations.
Yeah, I think he's under a little bit of pressure here with some good guys behind him. They like Isaiah Taylor a lot. They like Genesis Smith a lot. I think another thing to consider in the safety rotation is that Dalton Johnson got a little bit banged up in that game, so we're not totally sure he's going to be 100%. For UTEP, I think he's spending a lot of time in the second half in the injury tent, so there might be a little shuffling going on at that spot. Linebacker, of course, with Justin Flo seemingly on the ascent. Like, will he start in this game? I think he will.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a big showcase game for him, and I'm kind of interested to see a little bit too that strong side end position. Taylor Upshaw, he struggled a little bit against Mississippi State, getting pushed around, got out of position. Tai Youngulele has looked really good. The first two games, he's made a lot of plays. He's another one who's on the come right now, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if that was more of a 50-50 split in playing time.
Possibility that they put Uyuglele at defensive tackle because he plays both.
I mean, they do that. I think that's in passing situations, where they put him inside. That sack that he had came against, it looked like a guard, and put a sweet swim move on the guard, got into the backfield, made the play. He and Isaiah Ward have really popped these first two games, and man, if you're Arizona, there's no more encouraging sign in the world than some defensive linemen, stepping up and looking really good. Because I always say, hardest position to find.
And they got guys that are rotating in and out. I mean, they got 9 players in the game against Mississippi State. I just like Tai as a 3 technique. You have Bill Norton as the big nose, Taylor Upshaw, who has like a very good blend of size and speed and can really hold his own. And then Isaiah Ward is a long, athletic defensive end who could just really find his way to the quarterback almost all the time. And then Uyuglele, who's got a motor, really unlike anybody on the defensive line. He just continues to make play after play after play. But this is a good problem to have, right, for Arizona, is that we're talking about, hey, who should be starting on the defensive line when it's all said and done? But regardless, they're getting meaningful snaps.
I think that depth showed up, too, in the second half of that game against Mississippi State. I mean, they held serve basically on defense for most of the second half, enabling the offense to kind of get its act together and to rally, to come back and tie the game. I mean, they held them to a field goal attempt, a made field goal. after that first drive, that first possession of the second half, held them out of the end zone all the way until overtime. So really good job by the defense, really good job by the personnel staff and Johnny Nansen putting together a plan in the offseason, and that plan seems to be working pretty well.
If Justin Flo starts on Saturday and has a great game against a UTEP team that's probably going to run the ball a lot, does that give – now, I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy or Debbie Downer here. Does that give false hope? Because, I mean, we've always heard about Justin Flo struggling to play within the system and play his assignments. Going out there against UTEP and balling out, is that an encouraging sign for Arizona, or is that just, hey, they're playing UTEP and this is a game where Justin Flo should go out and feast?
Yeah, well, I mean, you play who you play. I mean, he can't control that. All he can control is executing his assignments, playing the best that he can. Again, I think if the game goes the way I think it's going to go, there's going to be opportunities for some younger guys to get in there later in the game. If you're Justin Flo, hey, if you get the chance to start, go out, show out, prove to the coaching staff that you should have been the guy all along, and then maybe you earn yourself another start the following week.
I think he will. And he showed on Saturday against Mississippi State that against a run-heavy team, he's going to be so useful. I mean, running downhill, making plays at the line of scrimmage. And a big part of the success that he had goes back to what we were talking about with the defensive line. You know, those guys filling up the gaps, taking up blocks, and Justin Flo and Jacob Manu and these guys were able to come in and make the plays. That wasn't the case at first. Mississippi State was really having their way running the football, and then big credit to Johnny Nansen. He said, okay, we got to change some things up. It's not working. And next thing you know, you see Justin Flo playing up right at the line of scrimmage. It was like, I compare it to Micah Parsons last year with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Micah Parsons is more of like a defensive end now, but the way that he played last year for the Cowboys is akin to, I think, what you're going to see with Justin Flo this season.
Yeah, Johnny said they showed them they ran some plays that they hadn't seen before on film, which is not surprising, for the first couple games of the season, especially when you have lesser opponents in the first week. You're not going to show everything. I was really surprised that Mississippi State didn't try to exploit the linebackers' aggressiveness a little bit with play action going over the middle. I mean, they had 0 pass attempts between the numbers of 10-plus yards in that game. Wow. 0, So it would not surprise me at all to see others try to do that. And, hey, man, it's hard for any linebacker to cover a tight end, running back, wide receiver in the slot. On those types of plays. I mean, those are the kinds of things that Jed Fish tries to take advantage of when he's on offense. I think that we're going to see opponents try to do that against, both Flo and Manu. They're very aggressive. They love coming downhill. They love crashing into the backfield. So you got to be disciplined if you're those guys.
Here's an over-under for you, Lev. Combined tackles between Manu and Flo on Saturday. How about 22.5? They had 24 against Mississippi State in Starkville. Each had 12.
I'm going to take the under just because I think it's going to be a one-sided game, and I don't think they're going to play the whole game.
Yeah.
So that would lead me they could each easily end up with around 9 or 10, and then you'd be under.
How about Jaden Delore touchdowns?
Total
touchdowns rushing
accounted for. Okay. What do you got?
I'm going to do 2.5.
I'll take the over on that one. Yeah.
All passing?
I'll say all passing.
Okay.
Yeah. It's weird. He's their leading rusher. And he's the only one who's scored a rushing touchdown, too.
I didn't realize that.
Right? I mean, how strange is that? That's an aberration to me. That's a blip. You're going to see some actual running backs, I think, running into the end zone in this game. So I think that's going to change. But still, I'll still take the over because I think he can do it through the air.
All right, we'll talk more Arizona-UTEP predictions later on in the podcast. Now it's time for Pac-12 pick'ems. A lot of interesting games this week. The Conference of Champions has 8 teams in the AP Top 25. That has never been done in Pac-12 history. And, of course, it's the most Pac-12 thing to happen in the league's final year as we know it. We got all the spreads. We got some important games this weekend. Lev, take it away.
All right, well, let's start with last week's records, Justin. 7-1 against the spread. Hello.
I'm doing the
back.
Hulk Hogan. Can you hear me now? Gesture.
Justin was 3-5 in week 1, bounced back 7-1, which puts you in first place against the spread at 10-6. Both Brett and I were 4-4. I'm 6-10. Brett is 9-7. I am, and you would have been perfect, Justin Spears, perfect against the spread, if not for that ridiculous ending to the Texas Tech Oregon game, which made bad beats. This past week, that was a bad beat. I mean, Texas Tech is winning, I think, by 9 or so in the fourth quarter. Oregon comes back. It's 31-30. Texas Tech has the ball and sack fumble. Ball goes right to the defensive lineman who should have gone down before scoring, right? Because they only went up 8 and they still had time and had a Hail Mary into the end zone. And Texas Tech was getting 6.5 points and ended up losing by 8. So you would have been perfect, my friend.
Man,
how about that?
What a bad beat.
Yeah, that's
all right. Let's see if I go perfect this week.
Yeah, okay. So a lot of we have 6 games this week. We're not picking any of the FCS opponent games, and we have a lot of big point spreads out there. Brett unable to make it today, but I do have his picks and I have some comments. So we're going to start with the Oregon State hosting San Diego State. That's a 12:30 kick. That's on Fox Sports 1. The Beavers are favored by 25 over the Aztecs at the refurbished Reser Stadium. Brett says that he is taking Oregon State to win and cover. Wow. Beavers are rocking and rolling. Doesn't stop here. What say you?
Wow. Okay. I mean, 25 is a lot of points. I know San Diego State ain't the San Diego State from the last couple of years, and they just lost to UCLA 35-10. But I'm going to go with Oregon State to win, but San Diego State to cover. I don't know why. I feel like was it Jalen Maiden, their quarterback at San Diego State? He had a touchdown and 3 interceptions against UCLA. I think he cleans it up, but too much Oregon State. Beavers are really, really good this year. I think they established their run game, and they outlast San Diego State.
But you're still taking. You're just going to take.
I'm
taking those points. Cover. It's a lot. It's a lot of
25
points. 25 is a lot of points. But I think I'm going to lay the 25. I really do. San Diego State. I don't know that. They got maybe invited to the Pac-12, but they don't seem to have gotten any of that Pac-12 fairy dust that's made everybody so good this year. Mm-hmm. I mean, they only beat Idaho State by 8. They beat Ohio at home by 7 in a game which Ohio didn't have their quarterback for most of the game. It feels like they're a little bit down. I'm going to lay the 25. I don't feel great about it, but that's the direction I'm going to go. All right, maybe the most interesting game of the week. We have Washington going to Michigan State, and I think we all know a lot of controversy around Michigan State right now. Mel Tucker is suspended for an off-field situation, might lose his job. That game is on Peacock. Yep. It is at 2 p.m., and Washington, number 8 team in the country, is favored by 16.5. That line has gone up since I sent these out last night from 15.5 to 16.5. Brett is taking Washington to win but not cover. He says Washington will be up 3 scores late, but Michigan State will get something in garbage time. So that's his pick. I am also going to go with Brett on this one. I just feel like that's too many points for a road favorite. I know Washington is super impressive. Kind of killed Michigan State last week and launched their really good season. Always hard to tell how a team is going to react to a situation like this. I think Mel Tucker is pretty well liked in that locker room. That's my impression. I think they're going to sort of rally around him. And this is going to be kind of more an ugly Big Ten style of game, and Washington is going to have to escape with a win. If they win by 10 on the road against a Big Ten team, they'll be feeling pretty good about themselves. So I'm going to also take Washington to win, but Michigan State to cover.
Yeah, I think with this situation regarding Mel Tucker, these guys are going to come out and play with some extra motivation in East Lansing, and I think there's something to be said about that. And whether Mel Tucker coaches another game or not, the Spartans want to go out and put a respectable performance against a top 10 team in Washington. Michael Penix, man, that guy's unbelievable. I love watching this guy play. 28 for 38 for 409 yards last week. I think he goes for over 400 once again. I do believe that there won't be a lot of deep passes. I know they have some targets, but I think Washington on the road will have a game plan where they pass a lot, but they don't get too crazy and don't put a lot of balls in the air and risk turnovers. So I think you're going to see a lot of short passes, death by 1,000 paper cuts. This is going to be a very Mike Leach-esque game. But with that being said, I got Sparty covering. Washington winning, but Sparty covering. I'm with you guys.
All right. So moving on to the next one, we have Oregon hosting Hawaii. This game is at 5 p.m. It is on the Pac-12 networks. Oregon's off to a 2-0 start. As we mentioned, they survived last week at Texas Tech. That was definitely a rough and tumble, difficult game, which I think we all thought it would be. Hawaii is 1-2. They struggled big time against Stanford in week 2, and then Stanford got blown out against USC. So kind of using that transitive property thing, maybe Hawaii's not very good. Their lone victory came this past week against Albany, which traveled all the way out to the islands. This point spread in this game, Justin, 38 points.
Wow.
The Ducks are favored. Brett says Oregon's going to win but not cover. If Oregon wins 42-7, they do not cover. 38 is a huge margin. So that is his logic there. He is taking the points with the Rainbow Warriors. I'm not. I know 38 is a monster number, and it's hard to lay that figure, but I think we've seen what this Oregon team is capable of doing. I think Hawaii is still very early in the rebuild under Chimmy Chang, and after kind of some rough patches last week, I think Oregon's going to want to sharpen things up heading into Pac-12 play. So I'm going to take the Ducks to win and cover, even though that is a gigantic number.
Oregon has a home game next week against Colorado. Overlooking Hawaii much? I think so. So give me the Ducks to win, but Hawaii to cover that point spread.
Your logic is very sound. That's a good point, and that kind of like that leads into this next game here, which is another similar case to that one. We have Colorado against Colorado State, as you mentioned, kind of the center of the college football universe right now.
Oh, sorry. Let me take off my hat, Lev. I'm talking to an adult here.
Oh, whoa. Wait, what? What is that? What is that reference, friend?
Our guy, Jay Norvell, Arizona Bowl legend, who, one of my favorite stories of the Arizona Bowl is this guy coming to the press conference wearing this like car mechanic shirt. And he says, yeah, this is my practice shirt. I wear it all the time in practices. We want to instill that blue collar mentality with our guys. So I wear a car mechanic shirt. He looks like a guy who can be changing your oil. I love that Jay Norvell does that. But Jay Norvell has to understand that you can't poke the bear anymore. You got to learn that you just can't do it. TCU kind of did it against Colorado, and then over the offseason, Matt Rule had some interesting comments to say about Deion Sanders in the program, which Shedeur Sanders took very personally, and they used that as fuel going into that game against Nebraska. Now you're just giving Deion Sanders and his team an excuse to go out and just run you out of the stadium. I love what Colorado's doing. Students were lining up like 4 days ahead of the game to get tickets for this. Deion has totally changed the scene in Colorado, and they're really rallying behind this team. And considering Jay Norvell just gave these guys all sorts of motivation, I think Colorado, they're just going to go out, and it doesn't matter what the point spread is. The Buffaloes are going to cover.
You might be right. I've thought about this game in that context that, that it could be a letdown for them. Huge game against Nebraska last week, like the whole world watching. Big noon kickoff, their biggest rival, first home game under Deion, all of those things. Next week, as you mentioned, starts Pac-12 play, and they're going up to Oregon. And that's going to be a massive, top 25 type of matchup. So is this a sandwich game? Is this a trap game? Is this a letdown game? I don't think it is to the extent that they will lose, but I do think it could be to the extent that they won't cover that 23.5 point spread. So I'm going to take Colorado to win, but Colorado State to cover. I could see the final score being 40-20 or something like that.
And by the way, going back to what we were talking about earlier about the hat comment, Jay Norvell said, I sat down with ESPN and I take off my hat and sunglasses when I'm talking to grownups because that's what my mother taught me. like, oh boy. Okay.
Why
do you do that?
Maybe because it's fun. Here's what Brett says. Brett is also taking Colorado to win but not cover. The weirdest part of this game, Colorado State has played one game this season. Arizona's opponent, UTEP, will end Saturday at 4 games played and will have finished 1/3 of their season. So odd. 23.5 points is a lot. Colorado's good, but I don't know about this one, says Brett. He is taking, with me, Colorado State to cover. It doesn't make a lot of sense when you just look at the teams on paper and all that kind of stuff, but we'll see if the circumstances dictate the outcome there. Okay. We have our next game here. Arizona State is hosting Fresno State. And this game's at 7:30. It is also on Fox Sports 1. Fresno State, the Bulldogs, are favored on the road at Tempe by a field goal. Fresno State's 2-0. I mean, they might very well be the best team in the Mountain West. And Jeff Tedford is a very good coach. They only beat Eastern Washington at home by 3. Last week, they did open the season with a win at Purdue. The one thing I'll say is I have heard that ASU has a lot of injuries going on right now, like a lot. They're also breaking in a new quarterback who's very raw. Talented, but raw. I'm going to lay the 3 points and take Fresno State. Brett has Arizona State winning outright. ASU is due, he says. They're not going winless. Put the ball in your court, Justin. Who you got?
This is a tough one, but ASU's down, and they don't really have anything to play for this season outside of maybe the Territorial Cup. So with all these injuries, and you're going up against a team that's feeling very confident about themselves, I think this is going to be a little bit of trouble for the Sun Devils, and I think Kenny Dillingham and his staff will kind of take their licks this season and regroup and figure out where they go next season. I think this is going to be a loss for ASU. Give me Fresno State to win by a touchdown.
All right, that leads us to the grand finale, the last game of the day on the college football slate. An 8 p.m. kickoff. Yay. Love it. More like 8:05, maybe 8:10. It'll be a long night at Arizona Stadium, but that's okay. That's okay. We're used to it. Been there and done that. Yep. We've got Arizona hosting UTEP. This game is on the Pac-12 networks. The Miners come in at 1-2. They lost to Jacksonville State in week 1. Rich Rod, their debut as an FBS school. UTEP bounced back the following week, defeating Incarnate Word. I think we know Incarnate Word from Cameron Ward, right? That's where he played before he went to Washington State. And then last week, they played my alma mater, Northwestern, which hadn't won a game on U.S. soil in over a year. Didn't win one all of last season. Game was 7-7 at halftime, and then Northwestern outscored UTEP 31-0 in the second half of that game. So that's kind of where we're at with UTEP. Arizona, as we know, is 1-1. The point spread in this game is 18. Wildcats are favored by 18 points. Brett says that he is going to take Arizona to win and cover. Arizona hasn't come close to peaking yet. They may not win 6 games with as rough of a schedule, stretch of schedule that exists, but they're due for a breakout game. This is it, 50-plus points. Wiley tops 100. Both Cowling and McMillan top 100. This is that game. He's got U of A on both. I am also going to take U of A to win and cover in this one. I am going to try to find my score, Brett, from my preseason predictions, which have been, I got the exact score for the Mississippi State-Arizona game last week.
31-24.
31-24.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy. I probably should have gone out and bought a Powerball ticket or whatever after that, right? Or whatever, the Mega Millions or whatever they're calling these things. I had 42-21 in the preseason. I think they could actually score more than that, but they would cover the 18 if that were the case. I just think that this is the game where they kind of put it all together heading into the preseason. We've seen it kind of, some rough patches here and there. The offense really hasn't played like that great, hasn't been that crisp thus far. I think this is an opportunity to do that. So I've got U of A winning comfortably and beating that 18-point spread.
I got Arizona also winning very comfortably as well. I'm going to go with Arizona 49, UTEP 14. This is going to be a game where Jaden DeLora really slings the football, and hands it off to Michael Wiley, DJ Williams, all of his running backs. This is going to be a very balanced game by Arizona, but I think the Wildcats dominate in both ways on offense. And I also, this is a big game for Jacob Cowling because he's going up against his former team. That's how he really became a household name in the college football landscape, was putting up insane numbers at UTEP, and they entered the transfer portal last spring, and he was being recruited by the who's who of college football. And for Arizona to get this guy coming out, I think says to really what they're pitching to these guys for how they're building Arizona. Jacob Cowling's also from Maricopa, wanted to be closer to his family, so it all kind of worked out well. But against this former team, I could totally see Jacob Cowling going for over 100 yards receiving and a couple of touchdowns.
Yeah, Jacob has 10 catches through 2 games. That's pretty good. He's got 2 touchdowns through 2 games, but he only has 69 yards, only averaging 6.9 yards per catch. There have been no big plays from Jacob Cowling. I agree with you. I think we're going to see some big plays this week. They're going to set him up for success. This has all the makings of a romp to me.
Yep.
Maybe we'll be wrong when we reconvene late Saturday night / early Sunday morning about this game, but I see it going that way as well.
All right, that'll do it for this episode of the Wildcast podcast. Arizona versus UTEP, 8 p.m. kickoff on Pac-12 Networks at Arizona Stadium. Please be sure to follow all of our game coverage on Tucson.com and the Wildcaster app. Thanks for listening.